Welcome to the Claim Your Day podcast. Here, it's all about taking full advantage of the time we have today and becoming intentional with our actions so we each can have the impact we want. If you want to stop drifting through life and start directing your life, and you're open to a short podcast from someone who's working at the exact same thing, then welcome. You're in the right place, my friend. Hi, I'm your host, Nick Mazey. To respect your time and so you can claim your day, let's dive right in. Well, hello, my friend, and welcome. Welcome to episode 6 of the Claim Your Day podcast. Today, we're talking all about values, discovering your values, because your values are the foundation for living an intentional life. And if you're not intentional, well, you're not going to be able to claim your day and live how you want to live for the life that you want for yourself and those that are most important to you. So we got to talk about values a little bit. And with that, I'm going to ask you, have you ever felt like you're drifting through life, you're just drifting? That you're not really sure what you're working toward, or as your days go, you're just trying to keep up, and you really don't see that it's with a specific kind of framework or specific guide of what you're doing and why you're doing it and why it's really important. If you're ever like that, then this episode is for you, my friend. It is so easy to get caught up in just the day-to-day, all the things that we got to do to keep up with paying the bills and what society tells us we got to do, caring for our families, staying up on top of everything at our jobs, trying to have an impact in the community, whatever it is tough to keep up with all the day-to-day. I'm not going to try to paint you some sort of rosy picture that's saying that I got it all figured out. But I will say that when you're in that mode, in that zone of you're just trying to keep up, if that's any bit of you, then one of the most important things that you can do is zero back in on your values. When you're focusing on your values and you know what they are, they're clearly defined. It's not like you're always doing something very different, but it adds so much meaning and fulfillment when you are taking steps aligned with your values. But when you're crystal clear on what your values are, it adds a lot of meaning to your work. And then also sometimes, the actions do need to change. So what we're talking about today is clearly defining your values. It's like the first step really to living intentionally and being able to make the most of your days is knowing what your values are, because then you can make a plan for how to live by them. If you don't, as the old Zig Ziglar saying goes, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. Well, if you don't know or clearly define, have written out, exactly how you want to live your life, like the values you want to live your life by, if you don't do that work up front, well, first of all, how do you know if you're living like that? How do you know what kind of adjustments you're going to need to make, and so on and so forth? It's basically like having a goal. My goal is to live according to my values. Now, I have goals that align with my values, but my goal is to live according to my values, to live the best life that I can for myself, my family, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I'll try not to get all into my faith side of it, but that's definitely one of my values, and so I got to make sure that what I'm doing is in line with them. Well, if I didn't know what my values were, there's no way that I would be able to live like that. I'm not saying I'll live like that perfectly, but there's no way that I would be able to live like that or know what kind of adjustments that I need to make. So knowing what's most important to you, it really makes it easier for you to make choices that align with your true self. Let me say that again. Knowing what's most important to you makes it easier, and I would say even just makes it possible, to make choices that align with your true self, with your values. See, my values, they might not be the same as yours. And that's okay. I imagine that some of ours overlap. Otherwise, you just wouldn't want to listen to this podcast, and that's fine. But if you don't know what your values are, then it's hard, and I'd say impossible, to live by them. Now, this is especially true when you're going in that day-to-day mode and you're just trying to keep up. It's like even if you know what your values are, when you're in that mode of just you're scrambling between family, getting the kids out the door in the morning or getting them to school, yourself getting to work, and you're doing all these things, you're just trying to keep up with the work, and then you have to get home at the end of the day. It's like when you're just running, it's tough to even just sit down and think about your values. So if you don't have the time to sit down and think about your values, well, I would say you got to create that time. And it might even just be in the commute or wherever you can find that time. Because your values, they guide your decisions, the big and the small. And if you don't clearly define them, then your decision is going to be made just off the cuff, whatever makes the most sense at that moment. But when you know your values, then you can focus on what truly matters. Because let's be real, between all the advertisements that are trying to tell us what's important, all the marketing, all the things that you hear in society and in the media, sometimes even friends, all those things, all those messages that you have that are telling you what's important and what to do, and you absolutely know this, all those messages might not be aligned with your true values. They might not. And when you have all that impact coming at you from every which direction, you've got to be intentional. Otherwise, it's going to push you off track. And before you know it, you're going to be saying to yourself, why am I living like this? This is not how I want to live. And when you do that extra work and you get intentional, you define your values, you take steps to live by them. See, living aligned with your values, like taking action and going day to day, that is aligned to the best degree possible, because no one's perfect, but it is aligned to the best degree possible with your values, that is so much more fulfilling. And even when things go sideways, and they don't go perfect, because they never will, but even when you get off track, but what you were aiming at was your real true values that are true to your core, that resonates with what your beliefs and who you are deep down as a person. When you were aiming for that and trying to work, then even when you mess up a little bit, like, you can still feel good about it because you were being intentional. All right. So I talk about to clearly define your values. How do you do that? I mean, that's such a big thing. How do you do that? Well, I'm going to share just a few different ways to go about it. You don't got to do all of them. Like I said, it would take a lot of time. But I do want to encourage you to spend a little bit of time thinking about this. That way you can just zero in on what's most important to you. One path or one way that people like to stay kind of on track and aware of and focused on their true values is through some journaling, and self-reflection. That works great for some people. Just sit down with a little notebook, and reflect on, just start and write out, what's really important to you. Maybe you can write down some of the experiences that shaped your values, your beliefs, all that, what makes you feel most alive. That could be a route where you're just writing it out. There's a lot of power in writing. So if you're going to take this step, I would say not just the self-reflection, sit there and think about it, but actually write it out. There's values assessments that you can take online. Some of them are free. Obviously, you'll have to enter your email address, and then they'll send you all this stuff, all the results. But you can explore that, and sometimes that's helpful just to kind of get your brain going on what this assessment says might be your values. Conversations with people that you trust, that will say those hard facts to you and be straight with you. Talking to friends, mentors, family members. Sometimes their perspective, can actually add a little bit of insight to you discovering your values. Thinking through different life areas. A lot of times our values are related to our life areas. Whether that's family, career, relationships, personal growth, faith, hobbies, passions, community, anything like that. A lot of that can be related to your values, those different life areas. So think about those areas and what's most important to you. I've heard this before. I think this was a John Maxwell thing, is, thinking about what makes you cry and what makes your heart sing. Those things that you just have that visceral response can be a good indicator that it's really important to you. Or maybe it's something that makes you cry, some other people hurting, or a different purpose or cause. Maybe there's a particular nonprofit out there that's doing a lot of good work, and when you think about it, you get a little emotional. or that excitement. Maybe there's on the other side of it, there's people out there that are doing really good, and when you hear about it or the opportunity to do something yourself, it just makes your heart leap. Well, that is related. I would say probably that is related to your values, and those emotional response can help you to clarify those. This is one of my favorites right here, and it's finding inspiration from others. Looking to a mentor, somebody that you admire, that you truly admire, not just because of their success, but you admire how they live and how they conduct themselves, and what they do, the value they add to others, and well, use them for inspiration and steal from them a little bit. Why I really like this one is because John Maxwell, he shares his daily dozen, and it's a dozen different priorities that he reminds himself on a daily basis of that are most important. And you can look it up, but a lot of them really just have to do with family and relationships, personal growth, adding value to other people, communicating well, and not that all those have to be values. But when I read his list of the daily dozen, I pick out, hey, these few right here, they really resonate with me on what's most important for me in my life, truly down to my core. But I got that from inspiration from him. It's not like I had to come up with that out of my mind. So those are just a few different ways that you can really clarify, write down, get crystal clear and write down some of the few things that are most important to you, your life, and your values, your core values. That way, while you're going about your day, while you're setting your goals, when you're reflecting later on saying, hey, this is how things went, you can see, hey, this is my true north. These values are how I want to live my life. Did I live that way? Or, hey, here are the steps that I need to take to make progress in that area. Which is spend a little bit of time thinking about it. It doesn't have to be a ton of time, but spend a little bit of time thinking about your true values and write them down. Write them down, because it's going to be an ongoing thing for your life. You're not like you're going to say, oh, hey, I achieved my values. It's not a destination. It's a journey, and as you're working toward that, living according to that, you're going to make adjustments along the way. But when you have them written down, when they're solid in your mind, it's going to make it easier, because you're going to always be able to bring yourself back to that true north, because you've gotten really crystal clear on it. And that way you can visit them, every now and then, periodically. If you do a weekly review or a daily check-in, or every quarter or once a year, we'll dive into that in other episodes, kind of doing those check-ins to keep yourself on track. But for right now, work on clarifying those values, getting rock solid on them, because that's going to help you to make your day what you want it to be, to live your best life, and to be able to have a greater impact. All right. Well, that's what I have for today's episode. Go out there, clarify your values, get crystal clear on them, lead that life of significance that you want, find that fulfillment, and as always, thank you for listening, and I can't wait to talk to you again in the next episode.